moderator bukan?
Ya?
Ada moderator bukan?
Sebenarnya saya lah moderatornya.
Okey, oh itu
Saya
pasal
tak
ada
nak
nama,
mengacau
nama.
pelajar sebab dia orang sedang menghadapi peperiksaan.
Okey.
Oh, waktu dia.
Jadi 3 orang belajar ya.
Betul. Tapi insya-Allah lah kalau okey saya boleh siarkan dalam YouTube dan insya-Allah lebih banyak orang akan dapat manfaat daripada
Okey.
sebab kita pun dalam bidang folklore ni pun satu yang dia bidang khusus dalam sastra kan. Jadi saya rasa dia sesuatu yang menarik sebab dia boleh dikongsi bersama dengan semua orang. Folklore biasanya mungkin dia mempunyai status yang sama sebab semua masyarakat ada folklore. Ada
Tapi di Malaysia kita tolak ke tepi
ya.
pasal tak moden, tak canggih,
Hmm.
membosankan. Kita selalu berfikir begitu. Jepun tak fikir begitu, Jerman tak fikir begitu, hak dia. Tapi kita mengada-ngada kan, yang bertulis saja yang penting. Saya tutup radio lah. Okay, you got it.
Okay.
Jadi sudah boleh mula ya. Okay.
Lagi 1 minit lah. Kita bermula dalam 1 minit lagi.
Okay.
Saya tunggu pukul 10 tepat. Walaupun saya bukan orang yang tepat pada waktunya. Saya memang kadang-kadang lambat. Tapi untuk kali ini saya nak dengar daripada Prof. Sebab saya tak pernah dengar daripada Prof mengenai cerita-cerita rakyat.
Saya pun tak pernah dengar ini. Saya Presiden Persatuan Sastra Lisan. Baru saya lepaskan. Sekarang pula tidak lagi. Tapi tak apa.
Okay. Saya sebab saya ni selalu berhubung jugalah dengan Prof. Jadi saya mungkin boleh beri satu pengenalan lah pada Prof, pengenalan ringkas. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang kepada or welcome. I think we will conduct this in English, right, Prof, or Malay? Do you want to
English?
Malay? Mana-mana
in
je.
English, but I'll go into Malay once in a while when it's necessary.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you everyone for attending this talk. Yeah. Inshallah, we'll put this talk on YouTube for the benefit of others. And this talk is about Malaysian folklore. And it is a special talk, I believe, because we are going to hear from one of the first few people who have ever written academic writings on folklore. And Prof. Muhammad Haji Salleh is our Sasterawan Negara, or National Laureate. And he has contributed much to the growth of our academic contribution to Malaysian, specifically Malay literature. He has written quite a lot, and the body of his works keep growing every year. He has written quite a lot on Malay literature, and he is also not only a person who has written critical articles on Malay literature, but has also translated many of our classical literature, classical Malay literature, like Salatun's. Even I cannot even pronounce it correctly, but he has written on Malay, sejarah Melayu, right? He has written many things on sejarah Melayu, and also on Hang Tuah. Okay? So his contribution is well acknowledged throughout the country and throughout the world. Yeah, and I got to know Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh when he was invited as the I believe, as if I'm not mistaken, as a national laureate for our university back in 2017. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, or 2018, I think 2018. And since then, his post has been continued until now. And so if you ever have any project that you want to do with Professor Muhammad Salleh, please do approach him or approach me, and then maybe we can help you assist in your project, because he's our national laureate, the national laureate for our university. Okay, and he has also written. He's a well-known poet. He has also written many poems, and one has to do with a place that is very near to UIA, which is the Tale of Sitanggang. He has written. He has remade his own version of what happened to Sitanggang, the new modern Sitanggang, and he called this poem Homecoming, Sitanggang Homecoming. And so we are all, in a way, new, Sitangangs, people who have been exposed to Western knowledge, the Western world. And when we come back to our universities, okay, when we come back to our communities, we have to be grateful for what we have. Before we start to admire other people's culture and literature, we have to admire our own culture and literature as well. So I think without further ado, okay, I would like Prof. Muhammad Haji Salleh to give a talk on Malay folklore. Silakan, Prof.
Terima kasih, Dr. Amelia. Ladies and one gentleman. That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Syakir saja yang ni. Where are the men? Whatever. I also have not given talks in English for a long time after I retired, and I've kept to my language. I've been building a sense of greater pride in this language of ours, which was one of the biggest languages in the world. They say it's the fourth or the fifth largest in the world. So we need to also uplift it, share it with others, and not be told that we come from an old language, unused and uncared for. And it is at the moment. Most Malaysians can't speak Malay, proper Malay that is, and they can't speak proper English either. So it's a few words here and few words there, and that's all they can offer us, including the ministers, which is shameful in a country that is old, in a culture that's very old, not being able to speak in the national language, in the Malay language, is such a shame. Can you imagine the English parliamentarian not being able to speak full sentences of English, or the French, or the Spanish parliamentarians and so on. So it is something that we have within us. Don't forget to remember this. pagi-pagi mengairkan diri untuk digulai bersama sayuran supaya kita mengenali diri dan kenal usul dan warisan. Jadi itulah pantun yang saya baru cipta tentang topik saya hari ini. Mari kita masuk ke mari kita masuk ke tajuk perbincangan ini. Hanya saya nak kena cari orang di mana ada ni, Amelia, di mana kita punya slide itu.
Prof nak saya ulang slide tu ke? Saya boleh buat?
Dia orang tak ada sini ya dia. Tolong.
Okay, sekejap ya.
Okay. Okey.
Okay, semua dapat tengok ya?
Okay. Ya. Jadi kalau saya nak advance, saya beritahu Amelia ataupun saya tekan mana-mana. Ya?
Saya boleh beritahu saya lah sebab saya yang control the slide sekarang ni.
Okey. Okay. Jadi ini tajuk saya dan this is my topic and I have been studying what I call kebijaksanaan dalam folklore Malaysia kerana di dalam peribahasa dalam sastra lama itu terkandung pemikiran yang sangat dasar dan pemikiran ini bukan saja yang biasa tapi mengakar ke dalam budaya kita, pada nilai kita, pada cara kita hidup dan bagaimana kita melihat diri kita. So it is the wisdom that is important. I think we care for this folklore because there is this wisdom. Otherwise, why should we take time too long to go back into the past? Because in the past, there is this great wisdom that we don't find nowadays. And not only in our Malaysian culture, but in African, American Indians, Southeast Asian folklores, we find this element of wisdom. So as an introduction, Malaysian folklore is a cumulative collection of stories. Please remember that, can be stories. But not many people know that proverbs and poems are also part of the folklore. Of course, stories are very important. They stick into the mind of younger people, but proverbs and poems stay longer because they mean more than just plots and characters that play before us or when they are being told. Thus, it is a treasury of ideas and a sketch of the emotional impact as they travel through their lives. So, excuse me, as children grow up, they also retain certain emotional experiences and remember them as they go through their lives. And our folklore is not less than 1,000 years old, and for some older than that. And I'm talking about Malay, Kadazan Dusun, Bidayu, and many of the other ethnic groups that belong to Malaysia. And we have only mostly known the Malay ones, but we do not know the Bidayu or the Kadazan Dusun or the Orang Asli tales and stories. There are at least 30 Orang Asli groups in the country, and they too, who have gone through life and difficult life too, do reenact, recompose their experiences for us. There have been some collections of Orang Asli tales from 3 or 4 groups, but not more than that. And we in the Persatuan Folklore Malaysia are trying to gather more from our brethren and sisters in the different states. But more difficult, we need to get those from Sabah and Sarawak. Yeah, that too. And if you are interested, you should do something about it too. If you go back to your villages, look up, search out, ask about the existence of these stories and poems. And when you have time, go into the villages and talk to them. Tape the poems and the stories. And then you can also translate into English later. But it is important that we should collect them. So their observations and perspectives are also the result of the cumulative response to life itself by many generations, in fact, hundreds, concerning the natural environment, events that they experience of love and conflict that they have gone through. So folklore is the life story of a community, of a people. And this can be very, very important and very, very wise too. And I have found that I'm also like you from English literature. But when I returned to Malay literature, I realized how important, how to say, deep delving these stories are. So they describe stages from scenes of real life. Jadi bukan buat-buat ya. The real life, the good and the evil, the sad and the joyful, the superficial and also the deep delving. So it is about life itself in its various aspects and its various experiences. And we as a maritime people, essentially, we have experiences on the seas. Many, many indigenous stories of the seas. The beaches. Oh, next. Can we go back to the last? Amelia, balik ke last. Okay. Okay. So on the banks of the rivers and paddy fields, these are our very environment, by the marshes and the hills and mountains, as villagers or our journeymen, as sailors of the high seas or hunters in the forest. They have come to know nature as well as their own self. Nobody, I think, in this world know of tropical nature as the peoples of Malaysia. The many, many peoples of Malaysia. They know the trees, the habits, the growth and death, and what they like and what they don't like. And of course, this talk about sustainability can learn a lot from the knowledge of nature by the people of the different groups. In fact, I read some time ago when Australia was burning, the Aboriginal people said, if only the white men listen to us and follow our examples, none of this would burn. None of this forest would burn down, and so the villages and the towns and so on. So the knowledge of how one treats nature and how one loves nature is very important. Yeah. And of course, the way we care for our paddy, of course, the Chinese and Japanese also care for the paddy, but we have a different type of paddy. We have a different type of weather and water system. So ours is a special knowledge indeed. And in the folklore, we carefully observe the animals and the birds, their ways and fate. They compare them with the human condition. So what happens to the birds and bees, to the animals, they compare with what happens to human life itself. Okay, we can go ahead. Okay. So one of the most important genre of the folklore is the proverb. I think so. I'm a poet and I feel these proverbs are in fact the earliest form of poetry and very compact, very intelligent, and very musical too. Because they do not come through just one generation or through one or two poets. They take a long time to mature. Once a pantun, a proverb is composed, then another person would read it, would listen to it, and might correct, might uh, add to its basic form and make it more musical. So you can see here what is done to the proverbs. I wish you could go back and look at some of the proverbs and compare them with Shakespeare, for example, or compare them with Yeats. And we have our own geniuses in the proverbs themselves. So I have included here two books, covers of two books, Naria by Richard Winstead. And this also is by, is it by? Tapi tak apa. We have done collections by more modern writers. I have done buku peribahasa Melayu yang coba mengumpul peribahasa ini dan memberi kategori kepada peribahasa ini. Jadi bukan saja campak semuanya dan orang lain cuba mencari, saya cuba bahagi-bagikan. Misalnya pandangan orang Melayu tentang alam. How the Malays look at nature. Yeah? So the plants, the birds, the bees, and so on and so on and so on. So it is more detailed, and if you are interested, you should try looking at the peribahasa. What is it? I can't remember my title of my books yet. Terbitan University Science Malaysia. Yeah, but there are these others that have been done by others. And all of them, interestingly, except this one, is by a Malay. Tapi tak apalah. They have done us a service by collecting them. Now we must study them for our own good. Jadi, there are many subgenres for the peribahasa, what is known as the peribahasa, the proverbs. And the subgenres are perbilangan, kata-kata adat, simpulan bahasa, and sambaan bahasa. Ini tergantung kepada kumpulan-kumpulan lah. And I'm interested in the peribahasa in the Malay language, mostly in Malaysia and also in Sumatra. Yeah, and they are composed by paddy planters, so they don't have a PhD. Neither do have a master's, neither do they have a first degree. But an intelligent person can take in the offerings of nature and life and turn it into interesting sentences, interesting forms, so that people can enjoy. So in the Malay area, you can have peribahasa from Langkat. Langkat is New Delhi. This is Amir Hamza's territory. Delhi is my territory. Jambi is not my Palembang, Bangkahulu, and Sumatra. So in Sumatra alone, there's so many areas that compose and know the peribahasa. And in Java itself, the peribahasa is well known in the Betawi, Jakarta, and some areas where Malay is used. Bahasa Melayu Jakarta, ya, yang sekarang ini digunakan sebagai bahasa atau dialek resmi antara orang muda, sehingga kita sendiri tak faham. Saya bawa balik dari sana, dan bila mereka bercakap terlalu cepat, saya yang kenal sastra Indonesia dengan baik juga tak faham. Jadi itu soalan lain lah. Yang pentingnya kita ada yang bertulis, yang kita boleh baca, dan kita boleh sedari sebagai budaya kita dan sumbangan kita kepada sastra dunia. Dan kita lihat tadi, orang putih banyak mengumpul peribahasa Melayu. Lebih banyak daripada orang Melayu atau orang Malaysia. Mengapa? Kerana di dalamnya ada keindahan, ada pemikiran yang sangat baik. Sebab itu dikumpul. Okey, boleh kita... Okey. Okey. Ini... nak balik ke tadi, ya, balik yang tadi. Just now, the one before this, or one after this. Okay, whatever. Yeah. Some more for the next one.
The next one.
Next one too.
Ni, this one?
Another one.
This one.
Boleh. Yang ni pun. Okay, this is the one. The alliteration.
Oh.
Okay. What is interesting is that I noticed that the Malays are crazy about alliteration, are crazy about the musical properties of words. We use a lot of them in the pantun. We use a lot of them in the proverbs, in the syair and the gurindam, and so on and so on. We are addicted to alliteration, addicted to rhymes, because they tie up difficult ideas in the short and memorable lines, and you do not have to lose them out. Yeah, if you don't like to remember long lines. And Malay words are based on syllabuses. It is interesting that we are the only languages in the world that use the bisyllabic words as the basis of our language itself. Lari, pergi, jalan, makan, tendang, ayam, dan lain-lain. Jadi mereka maaf, ini orang tua ni dia agak lupa. Okey, jadi kita suka perkataan yang berulang bunyinya, that repeat the sound of syllabuses, the sound of N words, and in that way they give a certain music to the peribahasa itself. Misalnya, let's have a look at some of the proverbs, ya. Seperti cincin dengan permata. Seperti cincin dengan permata. Pendek aja. Ya. Perfect match of a gem and a ring. And also perfect match of words. Seperti cincin dengan permata. It is said that the Malay breath is only of 8 syllabuses, not more than that. Seperti cincin dengan permata. Biar lambat asalkan selamat. Segan berdayung perahu hanyut. Kan 4 perkataan saja, dan 4 perkataan menjadikannya 8 suku kata. Dan ni muka dia conteng arang ni, lain sedikit. Tapi semuanya melihat bahawa bentuk yang terbaik adalah bentuk 4 perkataan, dan 4 perkataan itu membawa 8 suku kata. Itulah nafas orang Melayu, dan nafas ini digunakan dalam pantun. Hampir semua pantun menggunakan nafas ini. Jarang ada yang lebih daripada 4 baris. 4 baris dan 4 perkataan sebaris. Dan 8 suku kata dalam sebaris. Kalau lebih dari itu, orang Melayu biasanya susah nak baca. Dan kerana rentaknya sudah ditentukan sebelumnya. Okay? Okay. Now perhaps we need to say something about languages, which you know better than me. Because languages translate the human genius and those beyond our land and water, our tanah air. So we need that language to get the experiences that otherwise would not be recorded, that otherwise would not be rearranged into fine lines. So we need the languages. And these languages are created by the people who live by the sea, by the marshes, by the paddy fields, and on the sides of the mountains and the hillsides. So languages give substance to describe peoples and their culture. So language is not just asking that you have your own snack or nasi goreng, but it's more than that, as you know. It describes the deepest experiences of human beings, besides also the superficial ones. So, okay, boleh. So we must learn how to listen to the Malay language. And I guess if you do English, you need to listen to the English language. And if you listen to them quietly, you will hear the images and structure of ideas, the music of a people, the riches that overflow in that language. These are the assets bequeathed us by our ancestors, for which we do not have to pay. Now everything must be paid for, but your warisan, your proverbs, your language, you do not have to pay for. That's why the Malay language is going down to the dogs, because you don't have to pay, and not too many people care for it. Yeah. But language is the very bricks of our thoughts, and our thoughts are the bricks of our life. You can read this later. This is my poem in Malay that I translated into English, talking about what we have been talking just now. Just 2 stanzas. Hold your language in the bowl of your palms, for in its words you can hear the sigh of your ancestors. In its swung syllable is the dance and melody that may undo this ancient anxiety. Read your languages. Read your language. Its sentences may be the quiet antidotes to arrogance. Between its sounds, you'll hear the clear voice of your blood, which narrates the legend of your race. So next one, Amelia. Okay. Okay, now we cross over to literature. It is interesting that the word literature is from the Latin word litera, huruf, letter. Yeah? And the Malay word for literature is kesusastraan, coming from the Sanskrit word sastra. Sastra means a collection of stories and poems that bring benefit to its readers, to its listeners. Yeah, satunya literature is based on letters. It doesn't say what it should do, but in Malay, kesusastraan, literature helps to define and deliver ideas, edifices of culture. Saya tak tahu saya patut bincang terlalu banyak ini, tapi sangat penting bahawa kita ada kesusastraan. Sekarang ini saya tak tahu menteri yang sekarang ni mau atau tidak mau literature, tapi sebelum ini semua orang nak buang literature kerana kononnya tak menguntungkan, tidak ada teknologi dan tidak ada keuntungan. Jadi nak dibuang. Jadi dengan membuang kesusastraan itu, mereka juga membuang dirinya. Saya di antara orang yang paling sedih bila menteri bercakap bahawa mereka akan meminggirkan sastra. Dan saya tahu, over the years, many of the classes that I've taught, or my friends have taught, have closed down because there have been no takers. We only take technology, and we don't need literature. This collection of stories that have no meaning to people who want to collect money, who want to gather a name and climb up the social ladder. So the ministers, since 4 or 5 ministers before this, have thrown out literature. But let me compare this to what I see, what I know in France, for example. They don't throw out literature, and they have a lot of Nobel Prize winners. Neither do the Chinese, this huge technological society now. They uplift their literature. So the Japanese, so the Americans, and so on. But we, the great thinkers of the East, think literature is useless. So let's throw them into the junk box or into the parade, whatever it is. But people do not know that within literature is the soul of the people, is the ideas of the people. Imagine throwing out Shakespeare. You'll be throwing out a lot of good things. So if we throw out our literature, we'll be throwing out the best of us, perhaps. Seterusnya, okay, I've mentioned this a little before too, but let's try to read them anyway. For me, literature draws the greatest map of the human brain and heart. Is deep delving, is philosophical. Ya, tengok kita punya peribahasa sangat mementingkan cara berfikir, nilai-nilai kita, dan apa yang penting dalam masyarakat kita. Languages, folklore, literature, history, and philosophy help to create the multi-dimensional man that for most government in Malaysia, they don't care for. They tak peduli kan? Why need a multi-dimensional man when we can have a one-dimensional man, woman, who can be a clerk, who can be a technician, who can be a mechanic? You don't need more than this. That's what they've been saying all along. Okay, seterusnya. Okay. We have come to almost 30 minutes. This is just history and origins. We know of our history and origins because there are texts that tell of that history of ours. Ada Bukit Seguntang, ada Pasai, ada Melaka, ada durian, and so on. That's interesting, this thing about the durian, which I must tell you. The durian was or originated from a young princess who would not listen to her father. So her father cursed her and she became a durian. Well, it's not good for the family, but it's good for us because we can have a lot of durians because she died. Kesian dia. Apa, yeah? So these are the things, the origins and stories that are wonderful, yeah, and very thoughtful. Okay, sikit lagi. One or two more. Okay, and folklore, like literature, is helping us to remember the principle of philosophers of the past that we need good human beings to build a good society. This is, of course, never talked about among the scientists, among the technicians. But even technicians need good human beings in their society. Okay, next one. Okay, I think we should stop there. It's 10:40, and if you have any questions, I might want to answer if I can answer. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh. I think I will invite anyone to ask any question to Prof. Do you have any questions, Prof? Anyone here?
I have a question.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. My
Waalaikumsalam.
name is Haifa. And I would like to ask a question. Let's say like modern slang, right? Is this considered as the new form of peribahasa?
Slang, yeah. Okay, that's a good question. What type of slang? Is it thoughtful slang? Is it a slang that uses the musical qualities of the language? Or is it just fun type of a slang?
Let's say usually in the younger generations, instead of saying saya terasa, they would say hati koyak ataupun they say like that.
Okay. These are two different things. What you're asking about is slang. What I'm talking about is the peribahasa, this whole collection of the wisdom of the people before us. Jadi besar tu. In comparison, it's like a whole big room, and by the door is a tiny ant. That is the slang. And slangs don't last. They can be quite creative, funny. They can be funny. They can be creative, but they don't last very long. The slang of my time, for example, don't last till now. And this hati koyak ini, betul-betul ke koyak, kesian dia, you should take them to the doctors. Kan? Haifa, kalau apa betul-betul lah, apa, dia hati dia koyak, kena pergi doktor. Kalau dulu kata apa? Lu terluka, patah hati, terluka daripada koyak, kasihan waktu. Mati dah tu. Terluka, patah hati. Orang yang apa ditinggalkan kekasih itu patah hati. Lebih sedap daripada koyak kan ya. Ini dah zaman kasar lah. Ini zaman orang dah zaman kasar. Dan boleh kita lihat yang masa sudah dalam pantun banyak sekali pantun yang mengoyak-ngoyak hati ni. Carilah, akan jumpa. Ya, Haifa ya. Jadi susah nak samakan. Itu genre yang lain-lain. Satu yang philosophical dan tua dan bagus dan musical. Satu lagi hanya mainan orang muda selama beberapa tahun, dan setelah berapa lama hilanglah selanga itu. Itulah jawapan saya.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Haifa, for your question. Anyone else who has any other question?
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Prof, Dr. Aimilia, saya Nurzi. Saya nak bertanya sebab Prof tadi menyebut tentang cara Malaysia melayan sastra bagaimana. Jadi Prof rasa apa nasihat yang Prof rasa perlu diberikan kepada kami sebagai graduate, bakal-bakal graduan yang daripada sastra ni kan, untuk meningkatkan lagi lah kesedaran tu satu. Okey, dan kedua, Prof rasa macam kalau ikutkan future, masa depan sastra di Malaysia ni, melihatkan kepada situasi sekarang dalam masa 10-20 tahun kebelakangan ni kan, Prof rasa macam mana? Ada masa depan ke ataupun tidak? Sebab saya sentiasa optimistik. Saya sentiasa rasa ada keperluan tentang sastra itu. Cuma masyarakat kita dia macam mana ya? Dia tak lagi merasakan kepentingan sebab kita berada dalam period yang mana kita masih lagi mengagung-agungkan sains, sedangkan negara-negara maju dah lama cuba seimbangkan antara sains dengan humanity dengan sastra apa semua ni. Jadi saya rasa period kita tu tak sampai lagi. Kita dalam 20, mungkin 30, mungkin 50 tahun keterbelakang berbanding negara-negara maju yang dah sebenarnya mengangkat sastra masing-masing. Prof rasa macam mana?
Saya juga rasa kecewa, mungkin terbayang daripada apa yang saya katakan, apa yang saya cuba ucapkan tadi. Tapi untuk diri saya akan teruskan mengkaji semua ini. Baru terbit saja baru saja terbit buku saya, An Anthology of Traditional Malay Literature, lebih 500 halaman, sastra lisan dan sastra tradisional Melayu. Kerana pertamanya orang Malaysia pun tak tahu tentang sastra tradisional kita ni. Jadi saya cuba adakan terjemahannya ataupun saya kumpulkan terjemahan kawan-kawan dan satukan dalam buku ini. Dan saya juga kumpul pantun dari banyak tempat lah. Dari Manado, dari Sasak, dari Bali, dari Minangkabau, dari Pulau Pinang, Kedah, macam-macam. Nanti nak terbitkan sebuah buku pantun Nusantara yang mungkin juga 500 halaman. Ini karya besar ini. Pantun itu tak ada dalam budaya lain, melainkan budaya Nusantara saja. Jadi kalau kita sedarkan akan kepentingan ini, dan orang yang jadi menteri, orang nak jadi menteri pendidikan, dia patut masuk test. Ya, mesti ada masuk peperiksaan. Kalau dia lulus baru boleh jadi menteri. Ini apa-apa saja. Ya, menteri yang tak tahu tentang pendidikan dijadikan menteri pendidikan. Jadi apa yang saya cuba nak sebutkan ini sebelum itu teringat di Perancis pada suatu waktu mereka mencari seseorang yang boleh dijadikan menteri pendidikan. Jadi dia tengok orang ni tak boleh, orang ni tak boleh, orang ni tak sesuai, orang ni tak boleh. Jadi apa dia buat? Dia pergi ke universiti, dia ambil profesor yang paling senior, diminta jadikan menteri pendidikan. Ya, faham ya prinsipnya? Tak ada awak ambil lah ini bukan penting pun. Ini hanya pendidikan. Lepas tu menteri pendidikan tinggi lagi katun. Kata slang orang muda lah kan ya. Kerana dia orang tak tahu. Macam mana menteri pendidikan tinggi tak ada ijazah kedua atau ijazah ketiga? Dia patut diambil di antara naib chancellor yang paling lama. Macam Profesor Zul misalnya. Itu boleh. Kalau dia tak tahu tentang pendidikan tinggi, dia pun tak pernah ikuti kursus-kursus kedua, ketiga, macam mana dia nak menentukan pendidikan tinggi kita? Tapi falsafah pendidikan itu sangat penting. Sangat dasar dan mereka wajib tahu apa nak dibuat dengan hasil universiti kita. Apakah mau berimbang atau dia menjadi mesin atau menjadi komputer program ataupun jadi manusia yang berimbang. Ada agamanya, ada falsafahnya, ada sastranya, ada teknologinya. Saya ingat itulah tujuan pendidikan, bukan? Bukan nak jadi barangan komputer atau barangan teknologi. Kerana kita manusia. Dan manusia itu sangat banyak aspeknya. Jadi, saya bercakap begini kerana inilah dasar sastra juga. Mengapa kami menulis? Kerana kami merasakan sangat penting nilai-nilai manusia ini dipanjangkan, disegarkan, dikongsi bersama. Kalau kita tak kongsi, maka kita adalah manusia yang sangat tipis, tak mendalam. Dan banyak kita jumpa sekarang dalam internet, di pasar dan lain-lain. Dalam hidup saya tak pernah saya dilanggar begitu banyak kali seperti sekarang. Saya pergi ke mana-mana, ke supermarket misalnya, saya dilanggar. Saya pergi ke Indonesia juga saya dilanggar. Mungkin pasal saya kecil kot. Dia ada hak langgar orang muda kecil kan. Ataupun tak penting sopan santun ini, tak penting menghormati orang lain. Kerana mana ada dalam silabus menghormati orang lain. Kalau dia baca sastra, mungkin dia dapat bayangan bahawa kita sebagai manusia mesti menghormati orang lain. Orang lain itu ada hak hidupnya, hak caranya, dan inilah yang sudah hilang. Dan seperti saya sebutkan, tak pernah dalam hidup saya nilai manusia itu begitu kering dan begitu luntur sekali. Dan yang menang ni adalah orang yang kasar, ya, yang badan besar, dan bukan orang yang perasa, orang yang berfikir. Dan oleh itu sastra ini sangat penting untuk membawakannya. Saya nak ajak saudara-saudara yang ambil sastra ni menulis. Dalam bahasa Melayu tak apa, bahasa Inggeris tak apa. Dia bahasa Melayu banyak tempat. Daripada surat khabar kepada Dewan Sastra. Kerana kita perlukan orang yang mempunyai latar belakang berbagai-bagai sastra. Kalau sudah ada tahu sastra Sanskrit, silakan. Dan di UIA banyak orang tahu sastra Arab kan? Ya, bawakan kepada pada dunia sastra kita. Dan oleh kerana saya banyak menterjemah, saya juga sedih kerana walaupun banyak orang lulus bahasa Inggeris dengan baik, hampir tak ada penterjemah sastra sekarang ini. Kalau tak salah, tinggal saya seorang je. Untuk yang besar lah, kalau dia, ya, yang sikit-sikit tu adalah. Siapa nak terjemah karya-karya besar kita? Hikayat Ismail Yatim misalnya. Hikayat Indra Putra misalnya. Gurindam-gurindam kita. Siapa nak buat ni? Nak bagi pada kawan-kawan kita dalam sastra Melayu, mungkin susah sikit. Tapi saudara yang tahu sastra Inggeris. Dan saya nak cerita bahawa saya dari sastra Inggeris juga. Dan lucunya pada suatu waktu, Usman Awang tahun berapa, 68. Ni belum lahir ya. Saudara semua ni belum lahir. Ya, 68. Dia kata, Saudara Mat, tolong terjemahkan sajak-sajak saya ke dalam bahasa Inggeris ni. Kata nak buat apa? Dia kata nak buat bahan bacaan di sebuah bacaan puisi di mana ya dulu ya, galeri 11 di tengah pekan. Jadi saya mula menterjemah untuk dia lah. Ya, dan melawaknya dia baik dengan saya. Lepas tu dia ajak makan di rumah dan saya bujang miskin pula tu. Jadi selalu dapat makan di rumah Osman Awang. Dan saya rasa itulah dasar saya berkembang jadi penterjemah. Dan kalau tak salah saya sudah menterjemah ada tak 10 buah buku. Melayu ke Inggeris, Inggeris ke Melayu. Juga dari Perancis melalui Inggeris. Ya. Jadi ini tanggungjawab kita. Tanggungjawab kita yang tahu bahasa Inggeris ni. Cuba pelan-pelan ya. Cuba cerita cerpen yang mudah. Lepas tu meningkat kepada yang lebih susah. Buatlah, kerana ini saya ingat ini tanggungan orang dari Jabatan Inggeris. Kalau tak buat berdosa. Dan
Amanah
dosa
amanah.
masuk neraka ya. Okey. Ya, okey. Tapi faham ya saya punya tujuan tu. Siapa lagi kalau nak terjemah karya Melayu Malaysia ke dalam bahasa Inggeris? Kalau tidak, orang sastra Inggeris. Dan satu lagi yang menjadikan ialah kita ada terjemahan berpuluh atau beratus karya-karya Arab ke dalam bahasa Melayu kan. Agamanya, sastranya, hadisnya, tafsir Qurannya, macam-macam. Tapi ada tak sebuah karya kita yang diterjemah ke dalam bahasa Arab? Pernah dengar tak? Tak pernah ya?
Saya pernah
Sebab
lihat buku lat lah. Buku lat dalam bahasa Arab.
okey, menarik.
Itu kerja
Okey.
IIUM.
Okey, bagus tu. Lat baru jadi datuk ni. Okey. Tapi okeylah, kita terimalah itu ya. Lat. Tapi bagaimana pemikiran yang lebih mendalam, tak melawak, yang melihat kehidupan yang lebih penuh, yang lebih susah, lebih dasar. Tidak kan? Tak ada ya karya sastra. Tak ada. Dan kalau tak salah, saya ingat orang Arab mungkin ingat kita duduk atas pokok ni. Pasal tak ada sastra kan? Ya, dia duduk atas pokok je. Dan tak boleh salahkan dia sangat. Tapi di UIA ni, ini juga satu tanggung besar. Itu bukan sunat lagi, wajib tu. Wajib diterjemahkan sebuah karya, beberapa buah karya penduduk Islam yang besar di dunia. Ya, nak kena buat tu. Kalau tidak, berat sebelah. Macam kita terjemah dari Inggeris, kita tak jemah ke dalam bahasa Inggeris. Jadi itulah kita bagi tugas kepada saudara-saudara sekalian, dan dalam 2 tahun saya tidak dengar apakah yang telah tercapai. Boleh ya? Ya.
Jikalau tidak ada soalan lagi, if there are no more questions, I would like to invite Nurul Izzati, our PG, postgraduate student, to deliver her talk on the suitor test motif in popular Asian folktales. And she will be using one of your ideas, Professor Haji Salleh, for her paper, because of your immense contribution on this topic as well. So without further ado, maybe Nur Izzati, can you present your talk?
Yes. So can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
So, okay. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone. My name is Nurul Izzati binti Hassan, and today I will be presenting my This is actually my research proposal for my thesis titled Examining the City Test Motif in Popular Asian Folktales, an analysis of Malaysia's Puteri Gunung Ledang and Japan's Kaguya Hime no Monogatari. Okay, so in this presentation, I will explain about two chapters in my research proposal, which are Chapter 1, Introduction, and Chapter 2, Literature Review and Theoretical Framework. So this presentation also will end with a section, a few slides of work cited section. So first, I will start on my Chapter 1 that comprises subtopics of research aim, background of the study, problem statement, research questions, and research objectives. So my paper seeks to examine how the marriage concept is perceived, and among other things, the suited test motifs appearance in folktales centered on female characters in the folktales of Puteri Gunung Ledang and Kaguya Hime no Monogatari. Okay, so this study is informed by cultural materialism theory and supported by feminist theory to analyze how the significance of the marriage concept is presented uh, in producing different interpretation of women in folktales, which is in corresponding to how women is portrayed in the East and Southeast Asian history. So this paper also intends to discover the parallelism between the text and the adaptation films on their exhibition of the city test motif, to study the presence of women empowering elements stapled in the history and society of Malaysia and Japan. So as an introduction to my research, my paper has 4 elements under the background of the study, which are 1, the concept of marriage, 2, the marriage and city test motifs in folktales, 3, position of women in East and Southeast Asia historical context, and 4, the tales of Puteri Gunung Ledang and Kaguya Hime no Monogatari. So I included 2 opinions from 2 scholars, which are Claude Levi-Strauss and also our keynote speaker, Prof. Haji Salleh, on their concept of marriage. So Claude Levi-Strauss generalizes the functions of marriage as units in a system of alliance made or expressed, and therefore he introduced the alliance theory, which is which has a sub-element of the exchange of women. And this theory is actually vital in his foundation of the theory of kinship and marriage. And with the theory, the sub-element of the exchange of women, it has fueled the feminist discussion of how society view women in marriage or marriage institution. So Levi-Strauss also believed that the exchange process is vital in the incest prohibition rule, which he then equates women who are the most valued object of the prohibition with nature, and this socializes them, for one cannot simultaneously be the subject and the object of an exchange. Therefore, women is the object of an exchange, and we can assume that man is the subject of the exchange. So I also add the opinion of Prof. Haji Salleh on the idea of marriage in Suratu Saatin, which is a text that is important for my study. And in his book Akar Budi Adikarya Suratu Saatin, published in 2020, he listed a few functions of marriage from the perspective of kings and royalties. So kings back in the days portray a matrimonial or marriage institution as for diplomatic purposes, political purposes, the guarantee of a royal heir, the continuation of sovereignty, and as the symbol of peace and victory and harmony. And there is also a high tendency of for kings to marry ladies from other royal families, which can be seen in the marriages of Sultan Mahmud Shah with Princess of Majapahit and China, Raja Shulan with the daughter of Raja Chulin Tuan Puteri Onangkyu, daughter of Raja Kelin Tuan Puteri Tala Puncandi with the Prince of Singapore, and also lastly Sultan Mahmud Shah with Tun Fatimah. And similar to the theory of exchange of women by Levi-Strauss, marriage in the historical manuscript also portrays the objectification of women as something to own or purchase. it can be seen in how Sultan Mahmud Shah actually refers Puteri Gunung Ledang as barang or a thing, where he wishes for barang yang tiada pada raja lain, kita hendak meminang Puteri Gunung Ledang. And which I translate to a thing that no other king possesses. We wish for a betrothal with Puteri Gunung Ledang. So in line with the research aim, I explained the marriage and cedar test motif introduced by Steve Thompson in his motif index of folk literature published in 1932. The marriage test motif is classified under the H category, and there are subcategories such as tutor test, bride test, chastity test, wife test, father test, and also other marriage tests. And the index recorded the marriage test motif to exist profoundly in Europe, Iceland, and South Asia. But there are also weaknesses of the index where it includes minimal inclusion of folktales from East and Southeast Asia. And it also only recorded 12 folktales from the Malay archipelago, which mainly found in the animal-related motif or animal-related category, which we can assume came from the fables of Sang Kancil. Okay, although it has led to the publication of other countries' motif index such as Ikeda Hiroko's type and motif index of Japanese folk literature, it is undeniable that the index is actually Eurocentric, in which Alan Dundas criticizes the index, saying this concept was developed from a European data corpus and hence may not be applicable to non-Western materials such as African folk narrative. And there's also another weakness of the index from the feminist lens, in which it carries the androcentrism by placing female-related motif under masculine headings or male-related headings. Such as, for instance, we can see goddesses under gods category A100 to A499, and ogress under other ogress category G300 to G399. And there are also cases where women own their own categories, but they actually imply misfortunes, negativity, and secondary, such as women persuaded or wooed by trick, adulteress, outwits husband, and also unpromising hero, in bracket heroine. And then moving on to the third element, which is position of women in East and Southeast Asia, a historical context. Under this subtopic, I include the misogynist treatment of women in East Asia, because their rights as human beings were blocked due to the teaching of Confucianism. And in China, women were forced to behave in a certain way following the publication of didactic works such as Ban Zhao's Lessons for Women and Madame Zhang's Book of Filial Piety for Women. And it is because of this restriction, it has made concession for women to exploit their personal connection as wives, daughters, and sexual partners. Which leads to us to the next discussion of women as rulers and their involvement in political affairs. And evidence of female ruling is found in the governance of Sultanah Safiatuddin in Aceh, and it is also believed that the toleration of female rulings in the Southeast Asian state happened during the pre-colonial period, as recorded by history. Besides, it is also a custom for a king to receive assistance from a queen mother or queen dowages. Such can be seen in Bundo Kanduang of Minangkabau, Ratu Mas of Palembang, and Queen Mother of Sukhothai. Other than the Queen Mother or Queen dowages, senior women are also given administrative tasks in royal courts for their long residency in the palace. And it is because for their ripe age that they were recognized as the most mobile, the most outspoken, and the most influential cohort. And among the tasks that they were handling are range from managing palace finances to selecting consorts for young princes. And then The last element of my background of the study is an introduction to the tales of Putri Gunung Ledang and Kaguya Hime no Monogatari. So the two tales narrate the story of princesses that compose a test for their suitors by requesting extraordinary or impossible wedding gifts. Their requests actually represent their rhetorical rejection of the suitors as as Putri Gunung Ledang and Kaguya Hime did not want to get married or desire for no husband. And as part of my research scope, my thesis will use works by Prof. Haji Salleh, a translated work by Prof. Haji Salleh of Princess of Mount Ledang in chapter 12 of the Genealogy of Kings of Sulaiman Salatin, published in 2020, and also Ye Theodora Ozaki translated work of The Tale of Bamboo Cutter and The Moonchild in Japanese fairy book, published in 1908. So Putri Gunung Ledang asked for 7 wishes from Sultan Mahasusha, which are 7 trays of the hearts of mosquitoes, 7 trays of the heart of germs, the juice from a young areca plant, a vase of tears, a vase of royal blood, and a 3rd vase of blood from members of the royal family. And meanwhile, in a similar sense, Kaguya Hime actually requests each of her 5 suitors for an impossible gift. In a longer version, which were found in Ozaki's book, Princess Kaguya or Princess Moonlight then sent word to the first knight to bring her the stone which had belonged to the Buddha in India. The second knight was asked to go to Mount of Hirai and to bring her a branch of the wonderful tree. The roots of this tree were of silver, the trunk of gold, and the branches bore as fruit white jewels. The third knight was told to go to China and search for the fire rat and to bring her its skin. The fourth knight was told to search for the dragon that carried on its head the stone radiating 5 colors and to bring the stone to her. And the fifth knight was to find the swallow which carried a shell in its stomach and to bring the shell to her. Also part of my research scope, the study will also analyze 2 contemporary texts, which are the film adaptations of the 2 tales, which are Putri Gunung Ledang, directed by So Tiong Hin in 2004, and The Tale of Princess Kaguya, directed by Takahata Isao in 2013. So moving on to the second part of my introduction chapter, which is the problem statement. So my research actually found 2 contemporary issues on the women's right in Malaysia and Japan. So in 2021, the Straits Times reported that the mother and child citizenship issue, in which a child of a Malaysian mother has no right to pass for the Malaysian citizenship law. The law has caused many problems for mothers with foreign husbands, and a women's lawyer, which is Joshua Andran, expresses his opinion about the law as the product of a patriarchal system, which result in many other familial issues. Japan, on the other hand, faced many women's issues, and among them are sexual harassment. And the seriousness of this issue has brought about the #MeToo movement in Japan that calls out cases of sexual harassment in public. Women in Japan are expected to be mothers and housewives, as they believe that nurturing maternal feelings can shape social and cultural understanding of women's natural role. There is also an issue within the adaptation industry. In this case, we found that the adaptation have a patriarchal inclination in the design of presenting female characters, and this can be seen in the case of So Tiong Hin's Putri Gunung Ledang 2004, Edri Abdul Halim Majika 2010, and also Disney's Mulan 1998. So the directors of Putri Gunung Ledang's adaptations actually degrade her characterization by adding a male hero and altering her personality from an active to a passive human. And meanwhile, Disney has failed to showcase Hua Mulan's strength in the animated film, as reported by Chong and Liu. So based on the background of the study and problem statement, my thesis proposes 3 research questions, which are Number one, how does the suited test motif appear in folktales centered on female characters popularized in East and Southeast Asia, such as in Puteri Gunung and Kaguya Hime no Monogatari? Number two, how do the narrative actually reflect women's social, cultural, and political position in challenging gendered narrative as the second sex in hero-less tales? And the third one, which is the last one, is are there any current changes in the way women are perceived in the contemporary adaptations of the folktales, particularly in challenging the traditional gender role? And to answer the questions, there is this question. My paper intends to explore the extent of the suited test motifs appearance in folktales centered on female character popularized in East and Southeast Asia, such as in Puteri Gunung and Kaguya Hime no Monogatari, to identify the reflection of women's social, cultural, and political position in challenging gendered narratives as the second sex in hero-less tales, and lastly, to discover any current changes in the way women are perceived in the contemporary adaptations of the folktales, particularly in challenging the traditional gender roles. So now I will move on to my second chapter, comprises a review of past related literature and also theoretical framework. So my literature review actually has two subtopics based on the keywords of female protagonists, patriarchy, heroines, and also women warriors. So the first subtopic is patriarchy and misogyny in folktales. So under this subtopic, I include arguments on marriage, women's rights, and also their passivity. Many scholars believe that marriage acts as a form of transaction. Veronica Gorok-Karedi mentions that marriage and alliance as a form of communication involving a woman, just like other form of exchange value. Veronica, in such cases, women's opinion on marriage is ignored following the treatment of the heroine as a transaction product. And she adds, it also corresponds to the notion of parental involvement in arranging a marriage for the daughters, not sons, as the marriage plot sequences from a quest, a disappearance, a search for or substitution of the fiancé or the fiancée. And Christian Sado also proposes the identical relationship between marriage and the quest reward, as she looked at the hero as the winner and the marriage to the heroine as his triumph, which is presented as a reward. And Garrett Karadi also claims that matrimonial bond in folktales include parental involvement, as it only strengthens the patriarchal agenda in the narrative. By including the parents in deciding on the marriage, the heroine's voices are limited and restricted, and as it concerns a relationship beyond a man and a woman. In this case, it includes a relationship between two families. Marcia R. Lieberman, in the same sense, wrote, after marriage, she ceases to be wooed, her consent is no longer sought, she derives her status from her husband, and her personal identity is thus snuffed out. And another interpretation of marriage is as an illusion to the heroine's dream. Lewis C. Seifert claimed that marriage offers closure and the reassurance of familiarity as it is conventional to the patriarchal society. He also said that the marriage ending is the illusion of a mutually satisfying relation between men and women in patriarchy. Although it is not directly reflected in the plot of marriage, Hennard Dather de la Roche alludes to the presence of females' dream and erotic fantasies in the princess in La Belle au Bois Dormant, as she desires the prince upon awakening from her sleep. While Jack Zipes simplified women's life as lives lives only through the male and for marriage. Women in folktales are deemed passive by scholars such as Zipes, Keystone, and Catherine Regan. Zipes actually wrote, she must clock her instinctual drives in polite speech, correct manners, and elegant clothes. If she is allowed to reveal anything, it is to demonstrate how submissive she can be. In the same context, Stone mentions that the aggravated passivity in folktales such as La Belle au Bois Dormant and Sne Witchen, as the heroines are so passive that they have to be reawakened to life by a man. And the narrative of passive heroine are majorly dominated in Western folktales, such as the two mentioned before. But Catherine Ragan actually beg to differ, because she suggests that the passive females of Western tale would not be a product of a male construct of Western patriarchal societies, because female were just as passive in other traditions. So the second subtopic of my literature review is women-centric element in folktales. It can be seen that active female or active heroines in folktales still subjugate to the patriarchal society, because they are seen to be embracing masculinity, and also their action are orientating negative circumstances. Rough as box reflects that the only chance in introducing ambitious and active women is by to have her disguised as a man. In this way, her scope of activity is greatly increased. In other words, women need to abandon their feminine identity in order to fit in and be active in society. However, akin to the folktales with passive heroine, maiden heroines or heroines that embrace masculinity cannot escape the conventional closure of marriage, and this can be seen in the Chinese tale of Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai. Following Zhu's excursion in male disguise is right from the beginning meant to provide her with an active role in choosing fiancé for herself. The other issue of folktales active women from the patriarchal perspective is the hostile circumstances surrounding heroines that deny marriage. Past studies found that the heroines who condemn the idea of marriage are posed as a threat to the patriarchal society, that they are forced to submit themselves to men through forced marital relationship. Since their action is out of norm, Jacqueline Simpson noted that the heroines are deemed to be criticized and mocked in the narrative by being portrayed as dishonorable and meant to be humiliated. In the same context, she said, any heroine who departs from the norm, example by rejecting suitors or breaking promises, will be suitably humiliated before achieving her happy ending, which is naturally to obtain a husband. Although some heroines actually possess magical power and manage to liberate themselves by passivity, by emphasizing the possibility of female intelligence and creativity, their liberation was directed to the happy ending of marrying a prince as the ultimate reward, as noted by Bronwyn Redden. So Susan Napier's actually acknowledged Southeast and East Asia's folktales demobilization in Southeast and East Asian folktale, where their heroines are figured as active agents. In this case, noble women who successfully reject male advances. However, as seen in the past studies, their resistance against matrimonial entails consequences such as being forced to marry or being ignored and criticized by society. So based on the literature review, my study listed a few research gaps, which are number one, minimal listing of folktales from Asian countries in the Arne Thompson Motif Index. The second is insufficient research on how the tales perceive the idea of marriage in connection to the Arne Thompson Motif Index of suited. And lastly, the language barrier that causes less comparative analysis of the same motif in two different tales of different countries. And a short explanation of the theoretical framework before I end my presentation. My study will utilize the theory of cultural materialism founded by Raymond Williams in 1981. According to Williams, cultural materialism is the analysis of all forms of signification, including quite centrally writing within the actual means and condition of their production. The theory encompasses a few concepts such as natural literature and the social reproduction of culture. The analysis of the social reproduction of culture can be seen in the reproduction in stage and screen drama, novel, television, advertisement, and new technologies of communication. And this correlates to this thesis purpose of analyzing folktales. In this case, I assume that William will regard folktale as the natural literature, in which he said that natural literature is a selective tradition which is apparently based in objective judgment and literary value and worth. William actually acknowledged the relationship of his theory with the Marxist or the Marxism theory, but there are some ideas that Williams opposes. William actually disassociate materialist view of culture that connotes the culture is dependent and immaterial. He mentions that rejecting the material character of the production of a social and political order may lead to another failure, even more conspicuously to understand the material character of the production of the cultural order. In this case, he actually said that culture has its own material character and are not dependent to the Marxism theory. And Williams also reconstruct the materialist understanding of by introducing cultural materialist premise that reconsider not only material but also culture as the driving force. This goes beyond the idea that material forces drive history. For the material forces in the cultural materialist premise may include cultural aspects such as language, ideas, values, beliefs, stories, discourses, and so on. And I will also would like to note that Chinese scholars actually agree with William's theory of Williams and his theory, as his emphasis on the materiality of culture and its historical aspect and the implied critique of the orthodox Marxist theory of culture provides an answer to China's historical and cultural condition. So in corresponding to that, I believe that the theory will provide the answers to my research question on the action folk tales, as seen in how Chinese scholars actually perceive the cultural materialism to their China's cultural condition. So I think that is all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nur Izzati. Now I would like to invite Syakir Aiman to present, if possible, in 20 minutes, so that we have time to have question and answer session.
Okay, okay. Wait, Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. To our moderator, Dr. Emilia, and also to the notable honorable guest, Professor Haji Salleh, and to all the audience. So, without any, my name is Muhammad Syakir Aiman bin Muhammad Nadri, metric number G222834047. So, for today, me along with Sister Izzati will be presenting on our research proposal. So for my proposal, for my thesis, for my master's thesis, will be titled as Monsters of Malaysia, an analysis on the representations of fears and anxieties through the use of mythical creatures in Malaysian folktales. So for this presentation, I will be basically presents on all the subsections and sections that were included in the first two chapters, which is the introduction, and also in the second chapter, the literature review parts. So for the first sections that I will be explaining will be the background of the study. So for this part, I have divided it into 4 parts, which is the first one is the functions of folktales. So in the subsections, I will be focusing on the 4 functions of folktales that were coined by William Bascom in 1954. So in his article, he listed 4 functions of main functions of folktales, which is the first one, folktales functions as a means that led people to be free from reality and also from the rules that are set upon by the society, as in it helps us to imagine some things that we cannot happen. So in a way that it somehow reflects our desire to do things that we cannot do, especially those things that are restricted by the rules and also the norms that was set upon by our society. And for the second one, folktales tend to help people to validate their cultures, where other cultures might see our culture as something that is bizarre or out of the norm. But through folktales, it helps people to validate their cultures. For example, there are cultures in maybe Sabah and Sarawak or among the indigenous tribes that they practices hate hunting, which some others might think that, oh, this is against the law, but through their folktales, it helps them to validate their cultures. And for the third one, folktales serve as pedagogic tools for readers. So folktales tend to have moral stories that can be applied by peoples and readers alike. And for the last one, folktales function as a tool to maintain conformity. So for all these 4 functions will help me in order to in the process of analyzing the text and also the films that I will be using for this study. And for the second part, mythical creatures in folktales. So in this subsection, I have listed a number of mythical creatures that appear in various folktales of different cultures. And from my findings, it is found out that these creatures, they tend to represent fears and anxieties of the society towards various aspects. So for example, there are studies done on representation of ghouls, both in Philippines and also the Middle East, such as in the Arabian country and so on, and how ghouls represents fears towards death and also those who eat other people's. And in terms of Japan, there is the researcher, he used yokai, and he correlates how the use of yokai in their in Japanese folktales tend to represent people's in the past, their fears on unexplainable phenomena. And also jinn, which is available in various cultures, such as in Islamic countries, such as in Malaysia too, and how jinns also tend to be used in folktales as a way to express people's fears towards things that we cannot see. In terms of Slender Man, which is quite a modern one, and is very significant in the USA. A researcher point out that how Slenderman were used by people to express their fears towards things that they are not familiar with, especially those that are connected with the internet. So moving on to the next one, I will be explaining on the functions of monsters in folktales. So first of all, what is monster? So monster derived from the Latin words monstrare, which means to demonstrate or to show, and monere, which means to warn. So monsters are used as a means to warn people from committing certain acts. And people who go against these rules, which the rules that are set upon by the society, by the peoples, are viewed as monsters. And here, monsters reflect the society's fears and anxieties to this monster, which refers to those who go against the social rules and social conventions, which they view as different from them. So it somehow reflects people's fears towards things that they consider as the others or alien to them. And for the last one, I will be explaining on the monster motifs And here I will be referring to the motifs contained in Steve Thompson's Motif Index of Folk Literature, compiled in 1955, that are deemed relevant for these studies. So for my study, I will be focusing on two mythical creatures that are prevalent in our folk tales, which includes Harimau Jadian, which translate to Were Tiger in English, and Orang Minyak, Oily Man. So the motifs that are included are ones of the categorized these creatures, and the two motifs that for me I deem it's very appropriate for my study is the one that is contained under the category of bee animals and also D magic. So it is for me it is very important for me to note that under each under each of this category, there are a lot more subcategories that I will be thoroughly choose it accordingly to if it's appropriate for my study. So move on to the next part, the statement of the problem. So if I'm not mistaken, Professor Haji Salleh have mentioned before about the problem about our modern society where people tend to look down on literature, including folk tales. So here, people tend to misinterpret the characters in various well-known local folk tales, as they tend to view these creatures as solely as monsters or evil. So a lot of people, they from my understanding, they view characters solely as a black and white. There is no in between, as in reality human, we are in the between. We are in the gray area where we are neither fully evil or fully good. So that is one of the problems that I can point out. And there is also lack of study done on local folktales, especially on this topic, which includes make studies on all these mythical creatures, all these things that are considered as monsters, which could hinder people from having a new perspective in analyzing these folk tales. Because as I mentioned before, people tend to have this one view where they view mythical creatures or monsters solely as evil beings. So by having this study, maybe it can helps people to have new perspectives when they are discussing about these matters. And lastly, readers might overlook the representation of these creatures, which highlight the fears and anxieties of people in the past. So as these studies will be focusing on the representation of this creature, is a hope that my study will be able to highlight all this anxiety of the people of the past, which is represented by these mythical creatures or monsters. So next part is my research questions and also research objectives. Currently, I have listed 2 research questions. For the first one, I will be planning on how do the mythical creatures or monsters were represented in popular Malaysian folk tales. And for the second one, what do these representations referring to the mythical creatures or monsters tell the readers about the anxieties and fears of the people in the past in Malaysia, or maybe in the past it is referred to as the Malaya. So in answering the question, I will be aiming to study on how the mythical creatures were represented in popular Malaysian folk tales, and secondly, aiming to examine the representations of these mythical creatures that tells the readers about the anxieties and fears of the people in the past. So moving on to the next one, the significance of the study. So the study provide new interpretations on characters in various well-known local folk tales, which refers to Orang Minyak and also Harimau Jadian. And through the studies, maybe it could attract more researchers to conduct study within the field of literature, specifically in local folk tales. And it might also encourage readers to develop critical thinking when reading these folk tales and go beyond the surface meanings. And lastly, in terms of education, my study is will be fulfilling one of the goals contained in the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, in promoting high quality education, as it will encourage students in school, maybe in high school, university students, and also maybe in primary schools. It encouraged them to learn and garner the skills in the field of literary studies, which in this case, in the scope of local folk tales. So we on to the next part. I will be discussing on the scope of these studies. So here I will be explaining on the text that I will be using in analyzing and doing this research. So I will be, for this study, I will be analyzing two films, which are coincidentally directed by, both of them were directed by Tan Sri P. Ramlee. For the first one is Sitora Harimau Jadian, which is directed and published in 1964. So for this movie, it's actually considered as a lost movie and is recently resurfaced. And for the second one is one of the most well-known horror film that was directed by Tan Sri P. Ramlee, which is Sumpah Orang Minyak, directed in 1958. So move on to the next slide. So here I will be presenting on the additional references that I deem appropriate for my studies. So here I include 3 books or works that is written by former colonial, which includes Malay Sketches, 1895, which is written by Sir Frank Swettenham, Malay Magic, 1900, written by Walter William Skid, and The Were Tiger, 1916, which is written by Sir Hugh Clifford. So these 3 books will be my guiding references that will help me in aiding that will be aiding me in analyzing the films, because it somehow will provide more details and history on the 2 creatures that I will be analyzing throughout the studies. So moving on to the next part, the methodology, which I will be using contextual analysis. So here, the text will be interpreted beyond the textual meaning. And here, the text means the films and what is contained within the text. And it will be analyzed by making connections between the text and outer factors, such as the environment, the historical aspects, and also the society, which is go beyond the text. And as such, the films will be analyzed beyond the meanings contained within the films themselves. And by relating them with the outer factors, it could unveil the relationship between these monsters and the fears and anxieties of people in the past. So for the next part, I will be explaining on the theoretical framework, which in this study, I will be applying the monster theory. So here I will be explaining on the definitions and the main aims of monster theory. So monster narrative or monster theory is a way that is used by people to share the experience of horror and express their anxieties. And these fears and anxieties can be derived from any aspects such as disease, political instability, war, famine, social issues, natural disasters, crimes, and even the change in one society. For example, in Malaysia, maybe in the past when there's a lot of foreign workers, immigrants coming to our country, maybe our people express our anxieties or fears towards these things, these peoples that they view as different through the use of monsters. And monsters here have been used in many historical, geographical, and ideological contexts to demonize and dismiss any aspect that is considered as marginal, deviant, and also out of the norm. And therefore, the monster theory was created in order to analyze these representations, which comes in various forms such as movie, films, novels, short story, poems, and so on. And this theory aims to analyze on how monsters represent the collective fears and anxieties of the society to things that they perceive as unnatural, alien, and as others. So the history of monster theory. So monster theory is can be considered as a recent theory, and it was developed by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen, who is an expert in English studies and literature, where a lot of his works concerns on literature in the English medieval period. And he explained on this theory in his book, titled as Monster Theory, Reading Culture, which was published in 1996, where he divided them into 7 theses. So even though the studies on monsters have been done in the past, which dates way before Cohen was born, it was not well developed, and most of these theories, they tend to focus on the monsters itself, such as their characteristics and importance in their respective culture. So these earlier works did not focus on the representations of these creatures. So through Cohen, he somehow made the connection on how monsters, maybe in every culture, could be used as a means of representations of society of different cultures to express their fears and also anxieties towards different things. So moving on to the next part, Cohen's work on his theory is very important to researchers as it provides new insight on how we view monsters in variegated mediums such as books, movies, and folktales. And he coined out the term monster culture in his book, where he described it as a study on how monsters are depicted and what are their meanings and representations in different cultures and time periods. And this theory is still developing, and recent researchers are still applying this theory in their studies. So these are the 7 theses contained or coined out by Cohen in his book. And all of these theses will be implemented by me in analyzing the 2 mythical creatures, the Harimau Jadian and also the Orang Minyak, throughout the studies. So the first thesis is the monster's body is a cultural body. The monsters always escape. The monster is a harbinger of category crisis. The monster dwells at the gates of difference. The monster polices the borders of the possible. Fear of the monster is really a kind of desire, and the monster stands at the threshold of becoming. So here, Cohen somehow explains in details on how these monsters represent fears and anxieties that were expressed by the society. So with this, I think it is very appropriate for me to apply this theory in analyzing the creatures, because somehow with Cohen's 7 theses and monster theory in general, it could help me to coin out the representation of Malaysians' fears and also anxieties to its different aspects, maybe such as in our social or political form, through the use of monsters in our folktales. So moving on to the next part, which is the second chapter, which is the literature review. So here I will be focusing on 2 sections, which is the studies on mythical creatures in Southeast Asian folktales, and also studies on mythical creatures in Malaysian folktales. So for the first one, study on mythical creatures in Southeast Asian folktales. So here I've divided it into 3 categories, which is studies on Southeast Asian folktales in general, and studies on mythical creatures in Philippine folktales, and also studies on mythical creatures in Indonesian folktales. So what I can find out from reading all these materials is that a lot of people, they tend to focus more on in terms of Southeast Asian, a lot of people, they tend to focus more on folktales that was originates from Philippines, both Philippines and Indonesian, and also maybe Thailand. But very little of them focuses on Malaysia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and also Singapore. So that will be one of my research gap. So moving on to the next part, studies on mythical creatures in Malaysian folktales. So same like the one before, I have divided it into 3 categories, which is studies on animal characters in Malaysian folktales. So in these subcategories, I've mentioned on how past researchers, they analyze on animal-based creatures such as the famous kancil, and also the companion of sang kancil such as sang buaya, sang pak belang, and so on. And for the second one, I focus on the studies on human characters in Malaysian folktales. So here, I found out that a lot of researchers, when they make studies when they conduct studies in Malaysian folktales in terms of human characters, they tend to focus more on the characters of Maning Kundang and also Si Tanggang, as which highlights on the on the status of Si Tanggang as a very, very well-known folktales in Malaysia and also in neighboring countries such as in Indonesia. So for the last one, studies on supernatural beings in Malaysian folktales, and here I have included a number of studies that focuses on how people use how storytellers in the past, they implement the use of monsters or supernatural beings in their way of telling stories to others, to their audience. So lastly, I can see that one of the main research gap that I can find out that is that a lot of research, there is no I can say that there is almost no research that was done on the topic of monster theory, in the sense that there is no research that covers on folktale studies in the context of monster theory. Like there is no studies that focuses on how creatures or mythic creatures in Malaysian folktales tend to represent the society's fears and anxieties towards different aspects, and hence that will be one of my main reason in conducting these studies, as it will somehow give benefits to other researchers in the futures, in hope that they will do more research in this field of studies. So I think that is all from me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Shakir Arman. Let me go back to the main. Yeah. Okay, so any questions so far from anyone about any of the papers, any of the presentations just now? Anyone wants to ask anything? Anyone? No? Okay. Prof, Prof Haji Salleh, do you want to ask anything about the topic just now? Okay.
To ask, but to comment.
Okay, if you want to
Okay.
comment. Yeah.
I think both the papers are very erudite, very full and complex. Are these master's projects or their PhD? PhD or masters?
Okay, masters.
Masters.
Masters, terlalu besar. I think you have gathered all the theories together and also introduced them all together, the East and the West. And of course, in the end, you choose one. I suggest that you reduce it to a two-lane discussion, say Malaysia and Southeast Asia. They'd be more relevant. Even to include China and Japan is okay too. But if you start referring to theories of European folklore and heroes and so on, I think you're branching out too much. Yeah, and your trees are too big, too full. And as I notice it, these are for PhDs, not for masters, unless you want to get your PhD soon. Ya, mau ya, cepat ya. Tapi baik lebih lurus, ya. Di zaman saya begitulah, kecil je teori jangan banyak digunakan. Okey. Jadi kedua-duanya sangat besar, sangat baik sebenarnya. Very erudite, good English, and good coverage of the theories, but you do not have to do this. What you are interested in is the literary product, the folk tales, and the the approach that you want to take. That's all that's important. And then you're free to add what you want. Ya, jadi tak usah ikut dia orang sangat sehingga kita tak boleh bergerak. There's so many theories. Why don't you have your own theory yourself? Dan saya cadangkan tak usah banyak di Eropah, balik ke Asia Tenggara. Now you suggested that there are many things from the Philippines that we can learn from, and from Indonesia too. And that is why, the reason why there are not many works written on the Indonesians and the Malaysians. And sadly still, because people don't think we are important. And all these are done by Caucasians, by the Britishers, by the Americans, and so on. So it is okay to give a background as many of the works done on our folklore, their theories and so on. But in the end, I think you should give time to concentrate on one or two only. Yeah, tak payah banyak-banyak. And then I'm interested in the Japanese of Nuzul Izzati. Macam mana nak kata ya? Are there folk women heroes, heroines very close to us, or are they so different in culture from us in order that you cannot really show the similarities much? It's a different culture altogether. Baik pilih dari Asia Tenggara, baik pilih dari Indonesia, tak apa. Ya? Baik pilih dari Indonesia. Tak apa guna teori Jepun, tapi ambil sumber-sumbernya dari Indonesia dan Malaysia yang tak cukup dikaji. Tinggal dilihat tadi, Muhammad Syakir pun ada tunjuk begitu dan Nuzati pun tunjuk begitu. Tak ada kan tulisan banyak tentang sastra kita, tentang folklore kita. Dan tujuan kita ialah. Dan untuk sarjana, tak payah terlalu erudite. Ya, lebih banyak kajian, satu teori, satu kumpulan contoh, dan juga kesimpulan. Saya ingat sudah cukup. Itu biasa. Tapi ini Dr. Amelia ya suruh buat yang besar-besar begini ya?
Tak ada, bukan saya. Dia di bawah supervisor yang lain lah. Saya
Supervisor lain nanti.
metodologi.
Yalah, saya tak mau menidakkan cara orang lain. Tapi the simple theory, the good research and wholesome one will produce the best dissertation, the best thesis. If not, it will be lost among the ideas of other people, other theories, and other cultures, which don't fit in well with our culture.
Yes. But I think one of the reasons why the Japanese culture is very interesting or exciting for our students right now is because of the popularity of anime and manga and all that. If you go to Kinokuniya right now, you can see a lot of that that are being sold, anime, Japanese magazines and all that. So this is a I think a very trendy development. This is a development in that area. Influence our researchers are influenced by that. By the
Yes.
culture.
Yeah, I can understand. There is these other questions. Must our studies be based on animes and recreations macam harimau jadian gitu, and not on the stories themselves, not on the folk tales themselves? When it is recreated in movies, there's of course layers of interpretations, additions, and even wrong, how to say, interpretation aspects included. P. Ramlee bukan ahli ahli folklore kan, dia tak minat lah folklore. Dia besar begitu, dia dengar cerita begini, dia terus ni. Tapi saya rasa baik jangan pergi ke filem, pergi kepada cerita. Go to the stories. Ada enough stories, cerita apa harimau jadian ini. Harimau jadian ini asal usulnya orang Kerinci. Asal tahu kan, orang Kerinci. Ya, dan cerita itu dibawa ke Singapura dan ke Semenanjung dan lekat dengan negara kita juga, ya. Jadi yang satu lagi harimau jadian, satu lagi apa Mak Syakir?
Orang minyak.
Orang minyak. Orang minyak tu Petronas punya ni ke? Dicipta lepas Petronas ya. Menarik itu, menarik. Ada banyak cerita yang orang minyak ya.
Setakat ni saya jumpa dalam 3 ke 4.
Ya, 3 ke 4.
Yang tu mostly memang yang hitam putih, tapi ada juga yang macam modern punya.
Ini filem ya? Filem.
Filem. Tapi kalau kat dalam buku,
Folktales.
dia tak ada lagi sekarang ni yang macam bertulis cerita asal, sebab orang minyak memang dia folktales tapi dia cenderung ke arah urban legend.
Urban legend. Itu saudara kena buat keputusan. Ya, mana nak diambil. Tapi kalau jauh sangat daripada cerita, we are thinking of folklores. And a movie is not a folklore. Interpretation of folklore. And these interpretations can go way out of the real thing. So think of that too. Yeah. Yang apa tak ada, yang lain tak apa nak kata lagi. Baguslah, kedua-duanya bagus. Tapi overwhelming. Yeah, overwhelming to the listener, to your professors, to your lecturers later on. Yeah. Keep not too simple. Keep on the right path. Yeah, and follow your choice. Ya, jangan banyak teori sangat ya. Sana apa dari Amerika pun ada, dari Europe pun ada, dari apa Asia pun ada. I would suggest that you concentrate on the Indonesian, Southeast Asian, and also the Malaysian. Mungkin ada apa Vietnamese and Thai literatures, and this can shed also some light on our literatures, because we share almost the same environment and the same weather and so on, although the religion is different. But still, jangan pergi jauh sangat. Kalau tidak, akan menimbul masalah untuk saudara dan juga pada pensyarah dan juga nanti examiners. Ini cadangan berapa ratus halaman ni nak tulis. Nurul Izzati, berapa halaman? 1,200?
Selalunya dalam 150 macam tu.
Okay.
Double spacing.
Oh ya? Pendek lah tu. pendek lah tu. Thesis master sebut 300. Double spacing tak apa. Tapi jangan pendek sangat. Ya, nanti pengenalan tu pun dah 120 halaman. Banyak sangat ya, banyak sangat. Okey, tapi bagus dia orang punya apa konsepnya, rajin kerjanya, bahasa Inggerisnya, bibliografinya, rujukan sangat baik. Hanya nak kena sedar bahawa a master's thesis is only a master's thesis. Yeah, and take it as you can handle it, not too much. Yeah, okay. Itu pendapat saya. Juga untuk Mak Syakir, samalah. Ni semua cerita hantu ni. Ada kesukaan hantu di UIA ya. Ada banyak pensyarah yang boleh dimasukkan dalam kategori itu tak?
Tak tahu lagi. Doktor.
Tak tahu. Tapi kalau kerajaan Malaysia dah banyak kan?
Kalau hantu memang supernatural stuff tu memang banyaklah orang buat kajian kat atas hantu-hantu semua.
Hantu dalam politik. Dalam antara ahli politik.
Yang tu tak adalah lagi. Macam contoh yang saya baca, kalau hantu pocong tu ada orang kata dia symbolize fears towards kematian, and then kalau macam Pontianak, Langsui semua mostly macam generate fears dekat perempuan lah. Tapi macam ada satu pihak lagi macam point out like kita punya ketakutan dekat perempuan ni macam timbulkan satu macam misogyny, macam kita fokus sangat dekat perempuan sampaikan kita takut kat perempuan, even kalau perempuan meninggal pun macam kita punya rasa takut tu kita generate jadikan dia as monster, hantu pula.
Tapi itu satu sudut saja, satu dua orang saja. Bukan semua orang pandang begitu. Ada juga sebagai ibu, isteri yang baik, ya, dan lain-lain lagi. Jadi bagus sangat. Saya terkesan dengan kualiti tulisan sudah berdua, dan hanya saya nak beri cadangan kawal-kawal sedikitlah keseronokan, keasyikan, kegairahan itu supaya nanti dapat ditulis. Cuba tengok contoh tesis orang lain. Ya, tengok tesis orang lain dan teruskan. Selamat, maju jaya. Silakan. Ya.
Terima kasih, Prof.
Terima kasih, Prof.
Terima kasih.
And anyone else, if you have any comments, if you have anything to say or anything to ask, you're welcome to do that. Okay, so if you don't, then I think this will be the end of the talk. So thank you to all our presenters. Inshallah, I'll be sending a special gift to Prof. Haji Salleh for being kind enough to present in this talk. Okay, thank you so much. And
Not pictures of hantus and jangan gambar-gambar hantu dan filem yang menakutkan ya. Saya sebenarnya dari dulu takut hantu. Take care.
Prof. Saya tak letak gambar.
Okay. Take care.
okay, take care.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to meeting you again in any future conference. Okay, that may.
Bawalah ni pelajar-pelajar ni ke pondok saya, boleh duduk minum
Inshallah.
kopi ke ya. Tak usah cakap bahasa hantu lagi lah. Cakap yang baik-baik.
Okay.
Ya. Bawa satu hari. Ya. Tea time.
Inshallah.
Silakan.
Thank you so much. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih, Prof. Terima kasih, Doktor.
Sama.